Now, one of the most common stretches that people think of, or tests of flexibility that people have spring to mind, is touching the toes. In some ways, touching the toes is quite an artificial motion. There's not really very much call in real life for literally doing this, when, quite frankly, you can bend the leg or lift it. However, it's a reasonable enough test of general flexibility, particularly in the posterior chain. In other words, up from the calf, well, really from the ankle through the calf, along the hamstring, through the buttocks and into the lower back. Now, if you have difficulty doing an exercise like touching your toes, it could be down to tightness in any of those areas, or indeed it could simply be down to not so much individual tightness but just the chain not really coordinating and relaxing very well. If you've got reasonable body awareness, if you are reasonably able to focus on what you're doing and pinpoint a sensation in your body, if you just go into the motion slowly, if you have a sticking point, you can probably tell yourself if you're feeling the pull in the lower back, or in the back of the thigh, or in the calf, or whatever. Now the chances are that where you feel the most pull, the most tension, that's where you're the most stiff. Although some areas may try and overcompensate for other areas, so you could actually be reasonably flexible in one area, less flexible in another, and still find tension in a not unrelated area, but another area along the chain that's trying to compensate for a tighter area. In any event, with an exercise like touching the toes, most people approach it from the top down. So for a moment I will imagine that I've got relatively low flexibility. If I start going forwards like this, fine. Let's say I really am seriously stiff, okay, and this is as far as I can go over without feeling really a noticeable pull, maybe even some pain almost. Well, you know, pain may be pushing it. People interpret pain and discomfort along a sliding scale, but enough to say that I start feeling here that I really don't want to pull myself forwards anymore. Well, this can be a bit of a problem, because effectively, in order to touch the toes, what I'm having to try and do is push my body down, and that's quite difficult. If you really are tense, if you don't have the flexibility there, even if you have the flexibility but you, for whatever reason, can't really relax the muscle to allow the flexibility to be used, it's quite difficult to push yourself forward. And okay, there are several ways of getting around this. You might have a partner, for example, who may come along and push on your shoulders. Maybe you could have a rope or something on the floor and try and pull yourself down. But at the moment I'll just show you a simple way of using weights as an assisted, or as I would call this type of exercise, a loaded stretch. And this is a loaded stretch using weights for, well, particularly the hamstring, but also the lower back, and indeed the whole posterior chain, the calf, the works. Okay. Now, in many ways, this particular exercise is, you could almost say, a reversal of the way one performs stiff or straight leg deadlift. With a stiff or straight leg deadlift, or indeed any other deadlift, generally speaking, the weight is on the floor and you bend over and pick it up. I've just got this, however, resting on some support bars in a power cage. You could have a weight set up on boxes, you could be working in a power cage, whatever. But basically the point is here that the weight starts high, not low, and then I'm going to lower it to the ground, or at least move towards that if I have low flexibility. So first of all, I'll just show you what I mean by a stiff leg or straight leg deadlift, so you can see what I'm on about. Whereas with a conventional deadlift, I would come here, either have my hands on the outside of the bar for a standard, or my legs wider apart and my hands inside for a sumo. And then you bend the legs a little bit, take up the slack and lift. Okay. With a stiff or straight leg deadlift, I would put more emphasis on the back and on this posterior chain involving the hamstring, and I'll do a stiff leg first of all, slight bend in the leg, come down and lift. With a straight leg, as the name suggests, I actually more or less lock the leg, lift like this. Now as you can see, if I don't have the weight there, that's pretty much the touching the toes motion. All well and good if you've already got the flexibility. If you haven't, and you're kind of struggling to try and develop it, if you start with the weight from a high position, and I'll make the point here, don't have a lot of weight on the bar. This is not an exercise with weights to develop your strength. This is a loaded stretch. It's using weight as a way of assisting you to stretch. So you don't really need a lot of weight for this. All we're talking about here, well, I've got a 20 kilo bar and 210, so 40 kilos. But frankly, a 20 kilo bar on its own or something, you know, whatever seems reasonable. It doesn't have to be a big weight. It should feel something like something that you can handle easily, but simply that you've got to work against the weight a little bit, that's all. Anyway, with this, all I'm going to do is lift out of the frame, stand flat on the ground, and lower the weight. Okay. Now, if this is as far as I feel my flexibility will allow, that's where I'll stop. Okay. If on the other hand I feel that that's fine, I'll lower it a bit further. When I think I've got to the maximum point, I can come back up again. Take a breather, try again. Basically, I'm just allowing the weight to pull me down, and rather than me trying to reach forward, I'm actually using my muscles to resist the weight and then just come back up again when I'm ready. Now, there's a few points about this of ways you can improve it. One of the first things is, this is, as I say, a stretch, not a weights exercise, so we can use a different breath rhythm here. What I'll do here, right, is I'll go forward to the point, I'll pretend this is my maximum area of flexibility, and now I'll take a breath, and now I'll tense. And as I exhale, I'll let myself sink. Now I'll take a breath again, tense, exhale, and let myself sink. Fine. If you have difficulty, put it down. Otherwise, hold it wherever your point is, bring it back up, and then you can just re-rack. Now that's the main considerations with this exercise. I will, for those with slightly more advanced flexibility, just show a couple of minor variations you can do.